What did night owls pre-2000s do at night? You had to borrow movies, you could own movies, and most people did. Could also play video games. What are you talking about? TV did run late. The concept of the Late Late Show has been around since the 70s at least. And cable has been around since the 80s. So there were often shows or movies running on that all night. Pre-internet time wasn't the Stone Age. Hobbies existed before 1990. Chain smoked in the 711 parking lot. Rent a movie. Watch cable. Play video games. Also could read, write, listen to music, solve puzzles, drink, smoke. Many of the things we do today existed 50 years ago, just in a somewhat different form. Depending on your living situation, you could also play regular board games. My dad lived with roommates in his 20s and they all tended to have weird sleeping patterns because of working weird hours, so they constantly had games of backgammon or chess going on late into the night. Drive around and smoke or walk around town. Play video games at 711. TV went pretty late. Like sign off was midnight or 1 a.m. VCRs were around since the 80s. I was reading a lot of books. On the other hand, pre-2000 was even more intolerant towards night owls than today is. And more often than not you were just forced to go to try to sleep to get up early enough for school, work anyway. This week I stayed up late trying to beat one more map in Fire Emblem or read one more chapter in a Dan Simmons novel. When I grew up in the 90s, I stayed up late trying to beat one more boss in Final Fantasy or read one more chapter in an R.A. Salvatore or Star Wars novel. Not much has really changed for me. Have you heard of a concept called books? TV, radio, read, draw, music, etc. We'd count flowers on the wall. Didn't bother us at all. Played solitaire sometimes till dawn. Smoked cigarettes. Watched TV reruns. Stuff like that. We had plenty to do. As a 90s kid, 6 in 1990, 15 in 1999, I love questions like this. Trying to organize my thoughts coherently. But there's so much I want to cover. I had the time of my life. Before the internet, we first got dial-up in 1996. I would mainly watch TV or play video games late at night. I was a young kid, of course. So even when I was allowed to stay up, spring break, Christmas or summer vacation, I couldn't operate a motor vehicle to go anywhere. I have fond memories of playing those classic 8 and 16-bit games in the dark, under the glow of the big CRT TV. There's something about hearing the music and seeing the pixelated graphics on the screen that can't be matched now. It was warm. It was home. Not only was cable a lot more fun at night, or just relevant in general, there was an element of mystery to it. It was also fun getting away with the forbidden fruit. I wasn't allowed to watch Beavis and Butthead, or MTV as a whole for that matter. B&B was the most verboten animated program on at the time. It got moved from 7 p.m. Eastern Time to an 11 p.m. time slot after a kid started a fatal fire and his parents blamed it on the show. I used to sneak into the living room and watch it with the volume turned down. This was also back when the episodes still included the music video commentaries, and both parts complemented one another. And after it was over, the channel had a wide variety of stuff that would trip you out when you were already tired. Weirder music videos, the oddities, animation block, etc. The Max, the Head, and Eon Flux were brain rattlers. For that extra weirded out feeling, maybe I'd drained a few Pepsis or Mountain Dews in the afternoon. There was some good stuff to watch when I was exhausted and caffeine crashing. Nowadays, Comedy Central just runs a marathon of South Park 24 hours a day. Back then, they offered a mixed variety of quality and weird, just like MTV. Maybe they would show Mystery Science Theater 3000 reruns. Or Z-grade forgotten movies. I remember Something Wild being one of them. Oh, speaking of South Park, I remember them running a marathon of Comedy Central's delightfully twisted new show. Read that in Penn Jillette's voice. BTW. Which included only episode 16 at the time. I recorded it on videotape that night and wore it out after that. I wish I still had that tape. It would be a wonderful time capsule. Before Cartoon Network started airing original programming, it was just Ted Turner's dumping ground for everything he owned. They would mostly show Looney Tunes shorts during those wee hours. I remember falling asleep on the couch to Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. I would wake up an hour later, drowsy as hell, and something about that combination of Technicolor animation and music was the absolute weirdest thing. It made Looney Tunes almost frightening in a way. Now, TV did run late, but starting about 4 in the morning. The channel's usual programming would give way to infomercials. An hour or more dedicated to praising the same revolutionary product. If I managed to hold out that long, the audio was nice to fall asleep to. Then the internet came along, and TV slowly got replaced with late-night surfing. Imagine cycling through those Web 1.0 GeoCities, Angelfire pages. With the simplistic designs, animated GIFs, and embedded MIDI music. Instant messaging came about later in the 90s. You might log into your AIM, ICQ, or Yahoo Messenger account and also find your friend, or someone you were hoping would become more than a friend, lurking on there. It was a good time. It was the best of times. People cared more. Cable wasn't dead, and the internet was still new. I thought you were talking about actual owls. I'd listen to the radio and try to record my favorite songs on a tape. In the 90s, just fire up the SNES and enjoy a night gaming. Watch some VCRs. Watch whatever rubbish was on TV. Listen to music. It wasn't the Stone Age, haha. Reading, writing, listening to music, smoking weed, drinking beer, going to bars, concerts, hanging out in parks, watching TV. All the things we still do. Apart from the internet. We went out and socialized in groups. Stuff like bowling or clubbing or hanging in the park, arcades, etc. AM radio had the most insane stuff on at night, like the Dr. Demento show, where Weird Al was first known from. Late-night cable had movie marathons, sometimes with hosts like Gilbert Gottfried, Up All Night, or Elvira. We had hundreds of VHS movies recorded off movie channels. You would drive out with your friends to the 1 or 2 diners open 24 hours. Or maybe a chain like Denny's. On Saturdays you could see the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which always starts at midnight. Sometimes your friends would be working at a cafe or a club or record store and you would visit them. Or the video store. Who knows the craziest tapes no one rents because they are too weird. If you had a computer, this is when you would visit the BBS or get some tinkering in. We had the NES in the mid to late 1980s. And beating Mega Man took a really long time. So you would beat it again. You realize people today do things that are not dependent on computers, TV, the internet? Reading, creating art, sewing, knitting, listening to music, creating music, puzzles, playing with cats, talking to other humans around me, watching stars, all things I do now when I'm up late. Please go touch some grass. Edit. Typo. I remember, in the 80s, waiting for a copy of the latest movie to become available at the single little VHS store in my town. If it was a new release, like Terminator, you went on a waiting list because they maybe got 2 copies. 3 if the movie was huge. But usually, there was only one of every movie. All was hinged on whether the person in front of you took their entire 3 days of allotted rental time to return it. If they returned it, then you got to watch the whole movie in reverse because the same asshole didn't rewind it before returning it. Sometimes you didn't get to see the movie you wanted for weeks, months, years. So you made do with whatever was left on a Friday night, which wasn't much. Streaming and binging were 30 years away. You had to wait till the next week to see what happened in every TV show. Cliffhangers were 6 months waiting for a resolution of story. Y'all have way too much instant gratification nowadays. You'd probably cry if you had to wait that long for anything. And that was normal for us. Drugs.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.